in neoconservative discourse, anytime they want the public to support a new war, they immediately claim that the people who they now want to fight, either foreign or domestic, are the new Hitler. Even though there are organizations like the ADL that exist explicitly in order to prevent the trivialization of the Holocaust by recklessly using it to compare it to everything and thus making it an ordinary crime. The idea was Hitler and Nazism and the Holocaust were supposed to be singular crimes that you don't just go around comparing things to casually, otherwise you turn Hitler into just an ordinary bad guy in history and the Holocaust into an ordinary bad event. And they've done it to such an extent that now they've resorted to having to say the new enemy is worse than Hitler. Michael McFaul, the former Obama ambassador to Russia, had to apologize for going on MSNBC and essentially saying not even Hitler did the things Putin is doing, meaning Hitler had ethical constraints that Putin doesn't have. Douglas Murray wrote an article, and other conservatives wrote articles saying Hamas is worse than Hitler. Hamas is worse than the Nazis. Because even calling people Nazis at this point doesn't work anymore because of how many times it has been invoked. Here was New York Magazine that counted 61 times alone that Bill Kristol, the neocon, was reminded of Hitler or Churchill. It's the only example they know. Everybody who they want to go to war with is Hitler. Everybody who supports the war is Churchill. Everybody who opposes the war is Neville Chamberlain, who notoriously tried to appease Hitler by opposing war against Hitler. That's the only framework that they use. Now here, if we can go down to this video, we kind of put together a video montage just to highlight how long this has been going on, how many different people in the last 25 years, foreign and domestic, were accused of being the new Hitler, the new Nazi. They just every year find a new Hitler because that's just the standard propaganda that American warmongers use. So let's go ahead and play that video.
We're hoping to convince the president and the White House, the administration, to take the next steps to save Kosovo.
You leaving. Well, you mentioned the first President Bush. I believe he compared Saddam Hussein to Hitler at that time, and you of all people can talk about what it was like living under the shadow of Adolf Hitler. You were a very young girl at that time. Tell us how this incredible career started and relate perhaps to how what you learned then instilled in you in the world.
That we would go after terrorists where they exist. We would go after havens. The voices of concern about what Adolf Hitler was doing were very few. There was not unanimity. There were all kinds of diplomats running around holding meetings with him. There were people saying, "Don't do anything. He'll stop. He won't do anything terrible." And as they occupied one country after another country after another country, it wasn't until each country was attacked that they stopped and said, "Well, maybe Winston Churchill was right."
Mr. Netanyahu, you recently compared Hitler with President Ahmadinejad of Iran. Would you please restate what you said, and do you still consider that to be the case?
I said a year and a half ago that the year is 1938 and Iran is Germany and it's racing to acquire nuclear weapons. Well, if that's the case, then we're in 1939.
There is evil in the world today. It's always been there. For a free people, the choice has always been the same. Call it by its name and face it with courage, or lead from behind and hope it goes away. The lessons of history are clear. The strong survive and endure, while the weak are forgotten. In a dangerous world, it's time for American leadership, not surrender.
Arabia.
But I've seen that you called the Ayatollah
Khamenei the new Hitler of the Middle East?
Absolutely.
Why?
Because he wants to expand. He wants to create his own project in the Middle East, very much like Hitler, who wanted to expand at the time. Many countries around the world and in Europe did not realize how dangerous Hitler was until what happened happened. I don't want to see the same events happening.
Prefers isolation. But prior to World War I, look, Mr. President, prior to World War II, some prefer isolation. That's an easy thing to do. But sitting on the sideline isn't what made the United States of America the greatest nation in the world in years past, and yes, today.
You look, we didn't use chemical weapons in World War II. You know, you had someone as despicable as Hitler who didn't even sink to using chemical weapons. So you have to, if you're Russia, ask yourself, is this a country that you and a regime that you want to align yourself with?
So not far from here are the Churchill war rooms, where a leader of this great country stared evil in the face and recognized the threat which that evil presented to the entire world.
How concerned are you that if you kick Gaddafi out, that you allow Islamists then to get, as bad as he might be, to take control in Tripoli?
Well, I don't think we worried too much when we wanted to get rid of Hitler as to who would take his.
That I think what happened this weekend with North Korea, with China, I think it was Donald Trump's appeasement tour. And they talk about historic moments. This is historic. Him going to North Korea is like Chamberlain going to talk to Hitler. I mean, this guy was lobbing missiles into the Sea of Japan just a few weeks ago, and the president's going to talk to him.
Is that the claims by President Putin and other Russians that they had to go into Crimea and maybe further into eastern Ukraine because they had to protect the Russian minorities. And that is reminiscent of claims that were made back in the 1930s when Germany, under the Nazis, kept talking about how they had to protect German minorities in Poland, in Czechoslovakia, and elsewhere throughout Europe.
This was an unprovoked war. It reminds me of September 1st, 1939, when Hitler invaded Poland. And we need to be crystal clear about that.
And a journalist said, you know, there's one difference between Hitler when he was coming in and Putin. Hitler didn't kill ethnic Germans. He didn't kill German-speaking people. That's I think people need to remember that we're.
And what I say about this moment is we cannot have a Munich moment. We can't return to 1938 and when Neville Chamberlain said, let's give Czechoslovakia to Hitler, thinking that would end his desires. This is the same. Putin will not stop for so long as he thinks he can get away with it.
Sympathizer. Here's how it went.
Vladimir Putin hates us. He is malevolent. And he is as close to pure evil as I can find. He's also brilliant. And so I don't understand why any American would want an alliance with Russia. He's a killer.
Hard to see why he's a threat to us. And how many wars can we fight at once? How many people can we be in opposition to at once? Why not just accept it? People who are bad people share our interests and side with them.
You sound like Charles Lindbergh in 1938 saying Hitler hasn't attacked us.
I beg your pardon? Slow down. Hey, slow down, Colonel. I'm not in any way. You cannot compare me to someone who would make apologies for Hitler. And I don't think Putin is comparable to Hitler.
I think Putin is. Look,
I think it's a grotesque overstatement.
Putin, he assassinates dissidents and journalists. He bombs women and children on purpose in Syria. He is as bad as Hitler. And yet you want us to align with the Russians, with Iran, with Assad.
I want us to act in America's interest and stop making shallow, sweeping moral claims about countries we don't fully understand and then hope everything will be.
I actually want to read for folks what it is that Adolf Hitler wrote in Mein Kampf to understand how similarly what Donald Trump said is to Adolf Hitler. And he said this.
A lot of people have tried to draw similarities between Mussolini and Hitler and the use of the terminology like vermin and the drive that those men had towards autocracy and dictatorship. The difference, though, I think makes Donald Trump even more dangerous, and that is he has no philosophy he believes in.
I remember as a young student, trying to figure out
how did people get basically drawn in by Hitler? How did that happen? And I'd watch newsreels and I'd see this guy standing up there ranting and raving and people shouting and raising their arms. I thought, what's happened to these people? Why did they believe that? You saw the rally in Ohio the other night. Trump is there ranting and raving for more than an hour, and you have these rows of young men with their arms raised.
What I said starting about 2.5, maybe 3 years ago after one of the State of the Unions, that I feel very strongly that this man has taken on a strong-arm tactics. And I feel very strongly that he is Mussolini, Putin is Hitler. I said that back then, and I believe that. I believe very strongly that this guy never had any idea about...
I would say the same thing about Nazis.
Yeah, look, I will tell you something. You know, 1939, right down the street at Madison Square Garden, 1939, there was a rally on behalf of the Third Reich here in New York. 20,000 people showed up at MSG. I got to tell you something. I think we will look back on these people, these kids, these individuals supporting Hamas today, look at them at the same way those people supported the Nazis in the 1930s. Morally reprehensible.
Stand with the people of Israel. This war is based on religion. They're trying to kill all the Jews. That's what the Nazis tried to do. The Nazis believed that the Jewish race had to be exterminated to ensure their dominance and the creation of a master race. The Ayatollah wants to destroy the state of Israel. He literally wants to wipe it off the map, and so does Hamas.
Now, you can find Lindsey Graham comparing all kinds of people, just like Bill Kristol, to Adolf Hitler. He compared Gaddafi to Adolf Hitler explicitly when he was supporting the Obama administration's regime change war there. Do you see how they've reduced Hitler to just a cliche, just a name that they call anybody that they want to get you to support a new war against or to deconstruct society in order to undermine or subvert, even if it's the elected president, somebody who was the president for 4 years from 2016 to 2020, who they're desperate as they watch polls showing that he's likely to be reelected, and now they want to convince everybody that this time he's going to be the new Hitler. He's really going to put up death camps and start a bunch of new wars, when for the first 4 years he did nothing of the kind. In fact, he was the first president not to involve the U.S. in a new war in decades, but it's just such a rhetorical tick. It's like an instinct. They've reduced Hitler to a cartoon, and this is basic war propaganda. And when you think about how it is that the United States could possibly continuously convince its citizens to support so many more wars and to fund and arm so many more wars than any other country on earth. Right now, we're funding and arming two foreign countries, Ukraine and Israel, in massive new wars, while we're being told that American citizens have to endure cuts to Social Security and Medicaid because we're drowning in debt. The reason is because they use this tactic. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.